The second work I present today is closely related to the first one. It provides further analysis of bias-variance trade-offs obtained with different gradient estimators and learning methods for stochastic binary networks. We now restrict the consideration to the stochastic binary network framework, where gradients are well defined and we need to estimate them. There are several alternatives to the straight-through estimator, which are simple in the sense that they are easy to implement, require only one forward pass, and use standard backpropagation. One popular alternative is Gumballs-Softmax. There were two papers contemporaneously introducing the same technique at ICLR 2017, but none of them analyzed bias and variance of the estimator. There are also several recent works presenting improved experimental results. Our main motivation is to understand alternatives and their bias-variance trade-offs in theory and practice. Previously, we measured gradient estimation accuracy and learning performance in several ways. The general picture that we can sketch from these results for deep SBN models looks something like this. There are unbiased estimators, but their variance is too high. There are deterministic straight-through variants, which have zero variance, but a high bias. Then we showed PSA to be accurate in terms of mean squared error, which is variance plus bias squared. And we experimentally observed that straight-through can come close to PSA in wide networks where linearization assumptions hold well. In the gray circle here is depicted several methods which promise improvements, but their bias-variance trade-offs are not well understood. Analyzing these methods, we discovered rather negative results and issues. There was enough material for a full paper focusing on showing limitations and disclosing hidden issues. We start with analysis of popular Gumballs of Max estimator. This estimator is very easy to understand for binary variables. To sample a Bernoulli variable, we can sample a continuously distributed variable z and threshold it. In the GS estimator, it is taken from a logistic distribution, but could be in fact any distribution with invertible CDF. We obtained a reparallelization of Bernoulli variable in terms of a parameter-free random variable z, but we cannot differentiate the hard threshold function. So let us smooth the hard threshold. We can now differentiate in probability p or in the logit of this probability, whatever we prefer. There is now, however, a smoothing parameter tau involved called temperature. How does it affect the gradient accuracy? It is often annealed to small values to improve accuracy. Is this justified? We studied the asymptote of temperature approaching zero and show that the bias indeed vanishes as desired, but the variance grows inversely proportionally to tau. What happens is easy to understand from the following picture. When we draw noise samples a bit away from the threshold, we measure gradients very close to zero in the flat region of the smooth threshold function. And once in a while, when the noise sample falls very close to the threshold, we measure the gradient of very high magnitude of order 1 over tau. For a very small tau, the probability to experimentally measure a non-zero gradient up to some precision epsilon decreases as tau. According to this analysis, trade-offs achievable with different settings of tau look something like this. Indeed, we can decrease the bias, but the variance grows too fast. So the estimator cannot be used with a very small tau. For moderate tau, using relaxed samples in all binary units biases the binary sampling on the forward pass, having negative impact on all expectations, even those not requiring bilinear gradient estimators. With this notion, we can now analyze BiasBnN method, which proposes a Bayesian learning rule with GS estimator with temperature 10 to minus 10 used in the experiments. This of course was suspicious to us. The variance should be prohibitively high, which in practice would manifest as never observing a numerically non-zero gradient value during the whole training. But they demonstrate improved results. How this is possible? We trace the reason down to the following implementation detail. A technical tiny epsilon is added in the Jacobian. We show theoretically that with this modification, BiasBnN in fact becomes equivalent to common SGD with deterministic identity straight-through and weight decay. So the experiments reported in fact correspond to already known heuristic and fail to correspond to a sound variational Bayesian learning. Next, we analyze FouST. This method consists of several improvements to the straight-through estimator motivated by the Fourier analysis of Boolean functions. A significantly improved learning performance is reported in experiments. The first main issue we discover is that the method builds on an informally and ambiguously defined ST, resulting in a mismatch of the scale factors. One could argue that the scale factor could be easily compensated by a tunable learning rate, but in fact this is not so in variational autoencoders and deep networks studied in the paper. This coefficient is indeed important in practice. You can see for different learning rates, the baseline ST with correct coefficient performs significantly better than the variant used in FouST, with or without other FouST improvements. Note that the y-axes are aligned so that if we pick the best learning rate, there is a significant gap in performance between derived straight-through and the best FouST. We analyze the improvements theoretically. We show that in cases of practical interest, they impact either the bias or the variance negatively. In particular, we show the following. The technique lowering bias by importance sampling may increase bias. Reducing variance via the Fourier noise operation increases variance in comparison to basic averaging of multiple samples. Lowering bias by discounting Taylor coefficients may increase bias and increases variance. Lowering bias by representational scale changes the objective function. The details would probably be interesting only to specialists. Please see the paper. To summarize, in this work we provided additional theoretical insights in several recent methods for estimating gradients in stochastic binary networks, revealing limitations and showing hidden issues. We hope this work will help practitioners to avoid pitfalls and will facilitate further research. Thank you.